It was as if he knew he was about to die. Fullerton teenager Ricky Michaels stayed up late for a week writing diary-like letters.
A few days later, Ricky was stabbed to death in a gang fight that, like so many others, was pointless. Chris Blatchford tells us months later he met Ricky's mother.
And she wanted me to read those letters. I did. And what I read was haunting. Just a kid, like so many others in this town, caught up in a gang lifestyle that was taking him nowhere. And he knew it. Here's a letter from the homeboy dead.
This is Martha Klein. She says her hair turned white in just 2 years, worrying about her teenage son caught up in the gang lifestyle.
I just loved him so much.
Now, she visits him here at a Fullerton graveyard. His name was Ricky Michaels. He lived only 18 years, but his struggle-filled story is packed with conflicting thoughts and emotions that rip at the heart.
It hurts so much because you realize that everybody in a gang and your own child don't realize their worth, their value, their self-esteem. You realize the feeling of hopelessness in all of them.
By all accounts, he was a sensitive, shy, gentle, sweet little boy.
He was affectionate to me then.
The early years were filled with good kid awards.
He was so good.
Admiring teachers sent home glowing reports on his behavior.
He was excited about school. He wanted to be friends with everybody.
By junior high, there was still a happy smile on his face. But school report cards started to show a sad list of absences, incomplete work, and low test scores.
That's when he started shutting down. Beaten up 4 times by the neighborhood kids. He was getting disappointments about his, he wanted to see his dad so bad.
Dad, a former Marine who struggled with drugs and alcohol, left when Ricky was a small boy. Returned to see him a few times at age 14, but again, stopped coming around. After that, Barbara Logan, who also was once married to Ricky's dad, says the gang became a fatal attraction for Ricky.
That was his family. I have nowhere else to go. These are his buddies. I know we're not living the right lifestyle, but I love my buddies. How am I going to just go and leave my buddies and not be there for them?
Along with his gang buddies, Ricky smoked pot. There were curfew violations and other trouble. Ricky washed it all down with booze and hung out with his racially mixed crew in an old garage behind a Fullerton apartment complex. Charles Matthews, who says he was like a big brother to Ricky, was in the thick of it. They called themselves the Alliance.
We did a lot of bad things. A lot of us went to jail. A lot of us, our lives had went haywire. They're still going haywire now. But a lot of us came out of it.
It was Charles who exchanged harsh words and racial slurs with a rival gang member. Later the same day, in this courtyard near the crew hangout,
and there was blood all over the grass and the curb.
Homicide investigator Kevin Hamilton says 9 enemy gang members from a group called La Place, 2 of them juveniles, came looking for Charles and an apology. 8 were later convicted in connection with the murder. Some are appealing sentences that include life in prison.
I would say the fight itself took place in a few seconds. I think the knives came out pretty quick and people got stabbed pretty quick.
Charles took a blade in the chest. Another Alliance member almost died from a half-dozen stab wounds. Ricky Michaels took a fatal blow to the heart. Charles says he still feels guilty about it.
I could have avoided that situation by simply stepping back and saying, hey, let's just chill on out and, talk through this. We ain't got to go there. And I didn't do that.
There was no money for a coffin. Ricky Michaels was laid to rest in a cardboard box before his body was cremated. His brother placing a medal on his chest for trying to stop the attack that killed him and injured his friends.
It still kills me.
Ironically, school counselor Barbara Leone says Ricky was a peacemaker who offered promise.
He was a child of God, and he was a kid who was searching. And I think he was beginning to find what was going to be right for him.
In this Fullerton church, a year before his murder, Ricky went to communion. That night he smiled again. He started attending AA meetings. There was talk about jobs and school. And after his death, His mother found a dozen painful diary-like letters in his room.
It was summing up his whole life as if he knew he was going to die.
And Ricky's letters put a sight right on the heart of gang life. I am sick of all the gangs, he writes, and them trying to be hard.
Sure of
His
myself.
mother reads on.
I question my actions, feelings, thoughts, and faith. Sometimes I just want to die, so I don't have to worry anymore.
His mom says the gang, drugs, and booze hardened Ricky's looks, but his letters cry for relief. All I want, he writes, is to be a lovable, respectable person.
He said he felt insane when he was on drugs, alcohol, and in that street life. He just wanted out. He felt like a trapped animal.
His mom says he became lost and lonely, and his words tell how the group spirit is an unclean spirit, because it has to do with such things as drugs, crime, and competition. That group spirit eventually killed him.
It made me realize that, you know, it comes a time when you have to leave all that alone. You have to move on past that.
His mom says gang life heightened Ricky's depression and moodiness, and his letters emphasize he no longer wanted gang involvement. After a while, he writes, the gang causes confusion, emotional instability, and ignorance.
Dead-end lifestyle. It's a dead end.
And he knew it, you think, at this point?
I know he knew it.
And Ricky writes, I could never tell this to them now, because they don't want to hear it, and will condemn it because they know it's true.
And if they would read this with open hearts and get rid of this garbage, if they would read this with open hearts, it could make a difference in their lives.
Ricky writes he can no longer fake a role of being a badass. And after moving from his old Fullerton neighborhood to escape gang influences, he notes, it's so hard because I'm trying to be a good type person. Hopefully, he concludes, someday the devil in my head will die and leave me at peace.
He didn't deserve it. A lot of these kids, they don't even deserve it. It's such a waste.
But now, his mother, sitting over her teenage son's early grave, believes her son has found that peace, knowing he left something behind to show others the way.
What not to do. Encourage his friends to straighten out. That is my son. That's the real him.
At one point in his letters, Ricky wrote, I hope to put the pieces together before my chance passes me by. But more quickly than he imagined, a gang member's knife cut his chance to zero. It is his family's greatest hope that Ricky's words will motivate other kids to make sure their chance doesn't pass them by.
You got to feel for the parents.
To feel for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Whittier teenager Frank Perez had a dream. He was going to be shot and killed.
1 week later, he was gunned down by gang members who didn't even know him. And Chris Blatchford is here to tell us that Frank left behind something very special.
And that something special was a simple spiral notebook. But inside, Frank, a gang member himself, wrote with growing insight about the lifestyle that he had chosen. And as we see in this Fox Undercover report, this letter from the Homeboy dad reads like a warning.
It's a Sunday evening football game in a Santa Fe Springs park. Shaved heads cheer on the sideline. Baggy pants on and off the field are gang style. Here, tattooed bodies mark the players instead of numbered jerseys. On one side, a gang called Canteranas, or Singing Frogs.
Baby.
On the other, the Los Nietos Dukes.
Big bad sniper, Los Nietos Duke. Before a couple years back, we would have never been able to do this.
Hey, rip it! But now, a shaky peace treaty allows for an end run instead of a drive-by. And the sound of a ref's whistle substitutes for a blaring police siren. But this friendly game between two rival gangs is too late for one former Canteranas member. Frank Perez was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting a year ago. He was only 17, and it was the fourth and final time he was shot during random gang violence. His mother and stepfather, who raised Frank from the age of 4, are left with sadness and disappointment.
I think about that each day. I know Frank could have became something, someone, or...
I believe so very much. He could have become somebody. Yeah.
Throughout elementary school, Frank was an avid little leaguer and sports enthusiast.
It made me happy, so happy to see a kid like that. It made each other happy.
And here at Pioneer High School, a promising quarterback on the freshman football team.
He couldn't go on the football team no more. He didn't maintain his C average, so he used to get depressed. Go hang out with boys, get high, I don't know.
And from a fresh-faced freshman, Frank quickly turned into a neighborhood gang member.
He wanted to do good things, and sometimes he just couldn't.
Instead, he took the gang nickname Wicked, the same name fellow gang members would use to memorialize him after he was murdered. But Linda Rivera knew her son was more than that.
Something was telling me just like to call the school, and I asked the school, is there anything that Frank left behind?
And there was. A 12-page journal written in a spiral notebook several months prior to his death. In it, he talks about the adventure of being baptized at church, and his mother recognized her real son again.
The way I knew my son and how I knew him, bringing him up and the way that I thought was right, I see him coming back to himself.
Elsewhere, Frank's journal talks about the fulfillment of going back to school mornings, of working at the Montebello bus lines in the evenings, of going to church on weekends.
So he was starting to grow, you know, and look at life different.
Frank writes, I am glad my time is occupied so I won't hang around my friends and get in trouble. His dad believes the message is clear.
As a gang member, yes, I believe so. He said, don't go that way. Don't go as a gang member.
Just 5 days after Frank was killed, his baby girl, Desire, was born. His 17-year-old girlfriend, Tanya Magana, left to raise the child on her own.
When she gets older and she realizes that he's not here, then I think she'll miss him. I know she will. She's not gonna have a dad.
In his notebook, Frank, seeming puzzled, asks the question, why do people like to cause problems? Here on the street, fellow Cataranas gang members seem to know the answer.
Stupidity.
But Frank's death and the killings of 3 other homeboys in the last half-dozen years are accepted with resignation.
It's just like life is. Some things just happen. It's one of the things you just don't want to happen, but it happens. It hurts us all.
These gang members say they will always remember dead homeboys, but not necessarily their words of caution.
Be honest with me. You ever look back and wish you didn't get into this?
No. It's just the way we grew up.
There's no regrets, really.
No.
Meanwhile, Ricky, Frank's younger brother here on the left, to the regret of his parents, is getting deeper and deeper into the gang lifestyle, daily hanging out with his homies, a CR tattoo emblazoned on his arm, and not seeing the warning signs. 16-year-old Ricky, who now calls himself Little Wicked, tells us he never thinks about leaving the gang.
Nah, this is who I am or what I'm gonna do. Like some people have jobs that they do, you know. This is my job, taking care of my neighborhood, taking care of my homeboys however I can.
Meanwhile, his dead brother's picture sits on a table in the family living room next to a crucifix and a prayer. And his parents hold on to the hope that the few words Frank left behind will still show others the way.
If you put a little seed after, you know, it's there already, right? And sometime up ahead, you know, maybe it'll sprout.
Maybe, say the Riveras, their son's death can bring some life.
I hope these words mean something to someone out there and do some good.
We would treasure these for the rest of our life.
His parents say gang life made Frank a person that wasn't true to who he really was. That before he died, he talked about letting his hair grow, wearing regular clothes, getting married, and having a productive life. Unfortunately, a bullet from rivals who embraced the same gang code Frank once lived by prevented all that from ever happening.